Hello, beautiful and healthy self-healing human beings, citizens of planet Earth. Welcome to another episode of the Alter Your Health podcast, your source of information and inspiration to promote the holistic transformation of your health and the health of our planet. That's what it's all about here on this podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Benjamin Alter. I'm a licensed naturopathic doctor. I specialize in holistic lifestyle medicine, everything from nutrition, plant-based nutrition, to other healthy living tactics, and also mind-body empowerment coaching. Those are some of my passions. You can find out more about my offerings that are online worldwide at www.alter.health. We also have an online healing community, a place where self-healing individuals just like you come together for weekly meetings to discuss topics ranging all aspects from nutrition to healthy living and also mindset stuff. And it's been so much fun to share the hour-long meetings every week with people all around the world. And if you want to learn more about that as well, just head over to www.alter.health. We offer a free 2-week trial, in fact, to this healing community. So if it intrigues you, go check that out. Now on to the show, you guys. I'm really excited to introduce our guest today, the plant-based addict, none other than Adam Sudd. Maybe you've heard of him, maybe you've heard his story. It's really an inspiring, touching, deep journey that he's been on, and I'm so grateful to connect with him and share it more broadly into the world because I really resonate with where he's coming from his addiction recovery perspective. I don't consider myself to have struggled with addictions. I guess I do have some addictive tendencies that I keep at bay. I believe that, as human beings, we probably all do. And Adam also, even though he has experienced addiction throughout his life, he is not an addict. And I believe that no one is essentially inherently an addict. I believe that we can act in addictive ways, and we are also free to transcend these patterns at any point in time. So that's what Adam's story is all about. It's about transcending his past life of addiction, being out of control with eating and other substances. So just to introduce Adam really briefly, it was completely out of control, his life. He weighed nearly 350 pounds and was struggling with multiple addictions, serious chronic diseases, mental health disorders. His life actually nearly came to an end when he attempted suicide by drug overdose. And he woke up. That was his rock bottom, I guess you could say. And after then, he checked into a rehab facility, and he also had awareness of this plant-based diet, which helped him along the way as well. Adam is now a diabetes and food addiction coach for Mastering Diabetes. Adam also works with Engine 2 and Whole Foods Market Total Health Immersion Team. He is an international speaker for the plant-based movement and has worked in recovery centers using plant-based nutrition as a tool for strengthening recovery and relapse prevention. He also has founded a nonprofit that is dedicated to advancing the research of diet and mental health and addiction, and is running the very first research study to investigate the effects of nutrient-dense food intervention for addiction recovery. He firmly believes that the simplest change on your fork makes the most profound change of your life, and that self-love is also the root of this recovery that he has experienced. So you can find Adam on Instagram at plant-based addict, which is ironic, I think, considering that he is not an addict, but he is plant-based, and he speaks on addiction quite eloquently and powerfully. And you can also find more information about the study that he is pioneering with his nonprofit at gofundme.com/infinite study. So I want to dive into this one. I'm really excited to share it with you all. And just a reminder, if you haven't done so already, and if this sort of information and inspiration resonates with you, I would be so grateful if you would take 5, 10, 12, 15 seconds or whatever it takes to give a 5 stars, give a thumbs up, give a like, subscribe, rate and review this podcast wherever you're tuning in from. I would be so grateful. And also, if it does resonate with you and you feel like it would touch and inspire those friends and loved ones that you have, feel free to shoot this off to them as well. So let's dive into this one, you guys. Take a breath and relax and enjoy this deep, great conversation with my buddy, Adam Sudd. Okay, Adam Sudd, welcome to the Alter Your Health podcast. So happy to have you.
Oh man, I'm really happy to be here too. I love your message. I love everything that you're putting out there. And so I'm excited to have a conversation with you today.
It is a mutual love, my friend. And you're out there, you're around on the podcast scene. Your story is, but obviously not everyone in the world knows Adam Sudd. And not everyone in the world knows your story yet. However, I don't know, maybe it will be like a blockbuster film.
Doubt it.
But in any case, let's dive in. We know who you are now. Maybe we could start like what you do now, and then we'll kind of Quentin Tarantino kind of uncover how you've become who you are.
I like it. So right now I am I do a few things. One, I work with some of my best friends in the world. I work with Robbie and Cyrus, Robbie Barbero, Cyrus Kambata, Kylie Buckner, Mark Ramirez, the team of Mastering Diabetes. And what we do at Mastering Diabetes is we help people to master type 1, type 1.5 diabetes, which are autoimmune diabetes. And we help people reverse pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes using low-fat, whole food, plant-based nutrition by reversing insulin resistance. That's the key. We help people understand insulin resistance and how it's reversed using low-fat, whole food, plant-based nutrition. And
Awesome.
On top of that, I work with Whole Foods Market, part of their plant-based wellness initiative, where we run these programs, 4 of them a year. And what we do is we send essentially 70 team members to each one of these 4 programs. And they're plant-based retreats with Dr. John McDougall, Dr. Scott Stoll, one with Rip Esselstyn, and one with Dr. Joel Furman. And these are to help our team members at Whole Foods Market adopt a lifestyle that allows them to own their health and well-being for the rest of their lives. Sure, we are a private insurance company. We have private health insurance, but we want our team members to never be dependent upon it. We know the answer to the chronic health condition and the chronic health epidemic, and we want to give that power to every single employee. We've been doing it for 9 years. We've sent 5,000 employees, and we've invested $16 million in their health, and so it's quite an incredible thing. And then most recently, I founded a nonprofit called Plant-Based for Positive Change, and its purpose is to further the research on the connection between diet and addiction recovery, diet and addiction and mental health. And so we are spearheading the very first randomized controlled trial to investigate the effects of introducing a plant-based diet into early addiction recovery. And it's called the Infinite Study, and we're really excited about it. That's
so cool. So you've got your hands in a lot of things and all sorts of really powerful, important things. I love what Whole Foods is doing, and really it sounds like they're seeking a way of becoming independent from healthcare, independent from disease management, I should say.
Exactly.
And promoting health care and empowering. It's for their employees.
So the employees don't have to pay anything to attend. You literally just apply. And we have team members who are pre-approved based on biometric results. So you get a biometric screening done and you submit it, and that is reviewed by United Healthcare, which is our private insurer. So the company does not see the biometric results of its employees. But then UHC will indicate which people are essentially pre-approved. And UHC will send them an invitation saying, sign up and you will be approved. And so this is obviously for the purpose of, let's get the people who need it the most there. And we've been doing this for 9 years, and it's really incredible.
Cool. I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that there's other companies that are, buying into this model as well of investing in health rather than in disease. Yeah.
Kaiser Permanente is one of them. There's a law firm in Houston that was sending, I think, about 12 of its employees a year to the Engine 2 retreats. So it's becoming a thing, your companies are beginning to realize that when you invest in people's health, you not only save money on health insurance, you have more productive people working for the company. And
Right.
when you have people who are happy and healthy, that creates an environment that people want to work in.
Totally. So let's see, how did you come to have these roles that you have in healthcare, truly healthcare, not just
Yeah.
disease management. You are supporting people and caring for themselves and their health.
Yeah.
And I know that you have, it's been a personal journey. So where did the journey start, or where do you like to start sharing the journey?
The journey could not have started any further from where I am right now. And
Yeah.
literally the journey started when I was a kid. When I was, 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, I started to become very aware of my inability to refuse myself junk food. And I was criticized quite frequently for this. My parents, look, they had the best intentions in the world. I didn't understand that then that the criticisms that I was hearing was about the behavior, not who I was as a person. I wasn't able to understand that this was them. My dad had already lost his father to cancer. And so my dad had this fear of losing people to illness. And so I believe that sort of showed itself in his criticism of my food choices. And so what I heard was, I don't approve of you. But what he was really saying was, I love you, and I'm afraid that if you keep doing these things, I'm going to lose you. And so there was a lack of understanding, a loss of communication on both ends. But as an 8 and 10-year-old, it's very difficult to make these, connections. And so I heard, why can't you do this? This is, I won't accept you if you keep doing this. And I began to believe that I was a broken person, that for whatever reason was so easily done by others, just not eat it, was impossible for me. And I began closet eating, where, literally run from the kitchen with food in my pockets into my bedroom and shut the door, turn off the light, hide in the corner and eat alone in the dark. As fast as I could, because I was so afraid that the door was going to open and the truth would be revealed, that I was this broken child who was just not worthy of acceptance or love of my parents. And that was terrifying. Like, it wasn't the fear of being caught, it was the fear of being seen that was so frightening to me, because the acceptance of my parents meant everything to me. And about the same time I got diagnosed with ADHD. And I was taken to a doctor, and here I am at like age 10, age 12. And this doctor is essentially telling me that there's something about me that doesn't work properly, and don't worry about it, because we're going to give you a pill. And as long as you take that pill, it's fixed. I heard this word, fixed. What do you fix? You fix broken things. And so here I am getting more confirmation that my belief in a broken individual that I was being told to me that, look, yeah, you actually are broken, but luckily we can fix you with this pill. And that really had a profound impact on me. I believe that I was never enough as I was. My authentic self was never enough for anyone else, but there was always a way to fix it. There was always a way to hide my true self from people, to make me the person everyone else needed me to be accepted. And that's how I viewed myself and the way I moved through the world throughout my formative years. And it wasn't good. I was depressed a lot as a kid. In high school, I just never felt like I fit in. It's really hard for me to describe, but I felt like I was shrinking away into this world that was so overwhelming, and I just could not get a grasp on how to move correctly through and navigate through the world in a way that allowed me to feel like I belonged in any meaningful way. And
I'm curious, the belonging thing, because I think that's an important thing for human beings to experience. What aspect or what part did the food have with the feeling of belonging? Did you feel like you didn't belong because you had, this desire to eat junk food a lot, or what?
no, I honestly believe that I ate because I felt like I didn't belong. Because it was a way for me to, it was interesting. I would come home and I would go grab like 3 Hot Pockets, and I would make them. I'd go into my room and I'd get in bed and I'd start eating these foods, and it would feel like I was getting this big warm hug, like,
Yeah. I mean, I know that there's a saying that's used in the addiction world that, the substance, the food, the drugs, the alcohol, whatever it is, it's not the problem, it's the answer to the problem. So
yeah,
that's kind of what you're speaking to.
absolutely.
but just kind of understanding more like the not belonging
Mhm.
in your world. Like, what did that, what, I mean, looking back on that, do you feel
Yeah.
like you didn't belong, or looking back, do you like, what do
I,
you see?
I did feel like I didn't belong, and I'll tell you why. Because I was ignoring the feelings that my body was trying to tell me about how I was moving through the world, and how I was disconnecting from my authentic self. And that disconnection creates a pain because there's a sense that uh, my life no longer made sense in any meaningful way, because I was ignoring everything that my body was trying to tell me about who I was and how to best move through this world. And I was numbing and dulling that signal through any substance I could. Later in high school, I became highly dependent upon Adderall. I remember the first time I used Adderall, I thought, wow, I just found the greatest solution I've ever had in my entire life, um, because it seemed to fix everything that was wrong in my life.
So
Um,
you were prescribed first probably Ritalin,
Yeah, I was
or
prescribed Ritalin when I was 12, and then in high school, my prescription was changed to Adderall because Adderall was now the
kind of
new
the new
best
Ritalin.
thing. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you experienced a difference between Adderall versus Ritalin, and Adderall was like a step
Yeah.
up, and
Well,
like
it wasn't a difference because I didn't know at the time when I was prescribed it, I didn't know it was something that you could abuse. And I was at a party, and a friend of mine knew that I took Adderall and asked me if I could bring Adderall to the party. And, here's somebody saying Adam has something of value to us. And what I hear is not only that, but like, as long as I have that, then then people are going to want me around. And so, yeah, I brought it and I did it. And the first time I abused it, the first time I took more than what was readily prescribed to me, I felt this sense of like becoming who I thought I needed to be. Right.
hmm.
I was like immediately overly confident. I had boundless energy. I had no hunger drive, which was great because I wasn't overweight in high school, but I wasn't, I was a little chunky in high school. And I could make friends like that because I had no inhibition to go up and talk to people.
So when you first abused Adderall, what was your prescribed dose, and did you just take like one extra pill or something,
Yeah,
or
my
what?
prescribed dose was 20 milligrams at the time, and I took 40. And
And that extra 20 gave you like this,
it really
I
did.
don't know,
I mean,
high
it
or
did.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I have a profound memory of the experience of it. Just like just this unbelievable sense that my problems were solved. Right. That here it is. Every single issue I had with myself and how I move through the world is solved by this pill. And just take it. Just make sure you have enough. Make sure you keep getting it. This is it. This is your answer.
So at that point in time, did the 40 milligrams then become your like, oh, I need this to feel good? And were you
Yep,
self-medicating with 40 then?
I was.
And then it just kind of
Like with any
keep up?
substance, it just
Yeah.
kept growing and growing and growing until in high school, I mean, in college, when I went to college, um, it got to the point to where more was never enough, and never enough became a constant issue for me of running out, needing to know how long it would take me to get more, how much was I going to get, how much was that going to cost, where was I going to get that money. That these concerns were a constantly overwhelming problem that was reoccurring and recurring and recurring in my head that I had to solve all the time. And it got so overwhelming that I dropped out of college so that I could move back to Austin, Texas, because in Austin, I knew the people who were selling Adderall and I knew doctors that I could scam. And I started doctor shopping, where you have multiple doctors prescribing the same medications.
Mhm.
It's completely illegal. I was forging prescriptions. I was buying from people on the street. I was selling and stealing from people. And, I took a very, very, very sharp turn into a lifestyle that I had never thought in my wildest dreams I would ever end up in. But like without second thought, I was there.
So this was after high school into college.
Yeah, I dropped out of college my second
Or
year.
you, this was after dropping out of college.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so tell me about, you had the Adderall thing going, but the Adderall was suppressing your appetite. And tell me about during the Adderall thing, what was the food relationship? Because
So
it's like, it seems like one or the other.
it
It's
is.
kind of, you're not, yeah.
It's very much one or the other. And the thing is that my Adderall usage got incredibly out of control, to where, you know, the average prescription for Adderall is about 5 to 30 milligrams a day. And the last 5-10 years of my substance abuse, I was doing 450 milligrams in a 24-hour period. And I could get enough to do that for 6 days. And I would do that for 6 days straight without sleeping, without eating, literally just, I mean, I would eat like here or there, but it was pretty much just Adderall, 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 no sleep for 6 days. And then by day 5, I would end up in the beginning stages of a drug-induced psychosis. And I would end up using opiates to get myself to come down from this, out of this overwhelmingly, psychotic state, and just knock myself out. Because the only way I could stop this crazy sort of vicious cycle of not wanting to return to who I was, and just keep doing the drugs, was to not make myself fall asleep, pretty much put myself unconscious with opiates. And after that, there would be 2 weeks where I couldn't get drugs, couldn't get any more. And
So
that's where
for the opiates, were you also doctor shopping and buying?
No, because I didn't need a lot of it.
Yeah.
I just needed like 5 a week, because I would just use it to literally make myself go to sleep. So I had friends I could buy it from. And that was never an issue. I didn't I'll make it very clear. Like, I didn't like opiates. I don't want to be asleep. I never wanted to go to sleep. I wanted to feel superhuman all the time. Here's the thing. At that time in my life was such a painful place to be that I would do anything to not be present in it. And that is my favorite definition of addiction, is that my life was too painful a place to be to want to show up and be present for. And so my solution to that was substances, because I had so greatly disconnected from anything that was truly meaningful in my life. I had completely disconnected from myself, from people that mattered to me, from purpose, from my community. And that disconnection was painful. Living hurt. And anytime I would show up without substances and I would enter the world as my authentic self, my body would scream at me with feelings that I had been numbing for most of my entire life. And I honestly believed that these feelings I was having were the problem, that these were the indications of how broken I was. It didn't matter how many antidepressants I was prescribed, didn't matter how much therapy I went to, these feelings were always there. And because they were always there, nothing was working. And because nothing was working, I had to be broken. And so the best solution I found was drugs, because guess what? The drugs made me not feel these things at all. They took this experience of feeling away from me. And so obviously, if you think, from my point of view, that makes logical sense. If the feelings are the problem and the drugs remove the feeling, the drugs are the answer. That's it. But the problem is that the drugs just continued to disconnect me from what was truly meaningful in my life. And it didn't allow me to hear these truly meaningful messages that my body was trying to tell me. And, what was once the greatest solution I had ever found in my life: do drugs as much as I could. And when I didn't have drugs, eat 5,000 to 10,000 calories of fast food a day, so that I would literally fall into a food coma and just, binge my way through life. This solution over the course of time became the most insurmountable problem I'd ever faced in my life. And I just could not understand it, because eventually, anytime you numb and dull and avoid something that is so meaningful and so part of who you are, it's going to come back louder and louder and louder. Your authentic self wants to be heard, and mine sure did. And so it didn't matter how much I was on, I felt these things. And it was horrifying, because I'd spent most of my life ignoring these feelings. I didn't understand them. I didn't know how to comfortably move through them. And I didn't want to feel them at all. I thought feeling them was an indication that I was broken. And so, like I said, what was once the greatest solution had now become this overwhelming problem that I couldn't answer. How in the world did something that worked so perfectly at getting me out of a lifestyle, out of my authentic life, which was too painful, and into a place where I felt amazing, become a situation where I was on it? It made me just completely psychotic and still feel these incredibly uncomfortable things. How in the world did this happen? And why, if this is happening, do I not want to stop doing it? I just felt like an absolutely shattered human. I felt completely broken. And I didn't feel like there was ever going to be any answer at all.
So, I hear other people's drug stories and talking about feeling really good, and the drug movies that are out there, and people just fall into the good feeling.
Yeah.
Tell me about would that ever come? Was it ever
sure, in the beginning. In the beginning, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean,
but
in the
just in the beginning.
the first 5 years of my substance abuse was amazing. It was, like I said, it was the answer. It was what I thought was the answer. It worked. I felt amazing. I felt great. Every time I took it, I felt on top of the world. But
Yeah.
it got to a point where my life, my health, my sense of meaning in the world was so just completely destroyed that the only thing drugs did was get me to like this state of absolute numbness,
Yeah.
where I was like, yeah, I didn't feel anything, but I didn't hear the feelings. I didn't feel those, the pain anymore, but life was still miserable. It was miserable in every single sense. I had no family that I wanted to be around, not because they didn't want to be around me, but because I couldn't be with people. Like being with them was just the worst, because then it was like a mirror. It's like, oh, that's what life is supposed to be. That's what true meaningful connection looks like. I have no idea how to do that. And whenever I attempt it, I feel awful. I feel like a phony. And so, it wasn't like a planned thing, but eventually I came to the point where, I was 30 years old and I weighed nearly 350 pounds, and I had started to develop erectile dysfunction. And it was August 21st of 2012 that I attempted suicide. I can remember it was around midnight. I was laying on my couch, and, I had maybe, I don't know, 2-3 days left of Adderall. And I was just like, I was so done with the whole vicious cycle of just, having just enough to get by, and then having to go do these things that made me hate myself so that I could get whatever I needed to buy more drugs. And then the drugs put me into the state where it's like I was just like in the slightest amount of control of myself. I mean, nothing ever worked for me. It just kept getting worse. And I came to this realization that if nothing is ever going to get any better for me, I'm just going to continue to be a burden on myself and the people around me. And I couldn't do it anymore. And without second thought, grabbed a handful of pills, threw them down my mouth, and attempted suicide by overdose.
Had you thought about suicide as that? I mean, you obviously were in a state of depression,
Yeah.
and the medic and the abuse of the pills
Right.
was part of that self-medicated solution that you
Sure.
had.
Sure.
But had you ever considered suicide, or was it just like a whimsical, oh, there's a bunch of pills, I'm just going to throw those down my throat, see what happens kind of thing?
I'll say this. I fantasized about not being alive, right? I fantasized about not experiencing this miserable existence. But there's a difference between not wanting to live and wanting to kill yourself. And I spent the last part of those 5 years, the better part of those last 5 years, not wanting to be alive anymore, because life didn't make sense to me. I wasn't truly living. I was literally I was ignoring every single thing that is best about being human and believing I was right for doing it. And that belief that I was being right that I was right in this, even though at my core, my deepest core values knew I was wrong, was a constant battle with my ego. And that was rough on a daily basis, to be like, I'm right. And then at the end, but inside going, no, you're so not. And having to just somehow justify to yourself that, yeah, whatever, I got this so under control. Like, I am the greatest. I got this. And it's like tomorrow is not guaranteed. Like every single day of my life, if you're doing 450 milligrams of Adderall on a daily basis while weighing 350 pounds and having uncontrolled, undiagnosed diabetes and heart disease, which I didn't know I had at the time, every single day was a suicide attempt. Every single day was a suicide attempt. And I wish there was a way for me to explain what it feels like to be completely disconnected from the experience of being alive. Because I feel like if I could adequately explain that feeling, people would understand why a person like myself decided in the moment that suicide was an answer. Because believe me, I didn't want to die. That's not the thing. I just couldn't take life anymore. And I was too proud to ask for help. And honestly, like I mentioned before, I felt like I was absolutely helpless, like just completely broken. And so, I woke up after my suicide attempt on the floor, face down in a puddle of vomit. I was in a pile of fast food garbage because I'd lived like a hoarder. I was alone. And, I decided that, I'll say this. I'm not talking about the physical feeling. I'm not talking about the cramps and the pain of an overdose. I'm talking about the feeling of dying is the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. The emotional feeling of believing that you're about to die was the worst thing I've ever felt in my life.
So yeah, tell me about that. So you put the pills in your mouth and then you thought, this is it.
This is it.
I'm done. And so and that feeling was awful because like some people, like you talked about fantasizing of being dead or not being alive. So it wasn't a good feeling.
Yeah. Because when I fantasize about it, it wasn't real.
It wasn't like the light at the, like the heavens open up and the light.
No.
Like,
I don't remember anything after that. And clearly my heart didn't stop. Clearly I didn't stop breathing, which is a good thing, or else I would not have survived. But I remember trying to stand up when I noticed that my body was going through some things that I've never experienced before throughout my entire drug use, which was, the point where I was about to, really start hyperventilating to the point of passing out and throwing up and all this stuff. But I tried to stand up, and all of a sudden, like, I noticed I'm super lightheaded. The black is starting to fade in. And I honestly believe that was the last thing I was ever going to see. And that feeling of like, I'm dying alone, and I am dying in a place where I am so like the furthest I've ever been from being alive, right? That it's one thing to go through your life disconnected from what is truly meaningful to you, but it is another thing to want to end your life because you believe you'll never get back there. And that understanding hit me like a rock when I realized I was about to overdose and pass out, and that I might never wake up again. That I felt like I'd utterly failed as a human. And when I woke up, I decided, you know what, that wasn't a solution that I wanted to try again.
Were you surprised when you woke up? I mean, what was the first
oh my gosh, yeah.
Was like, where am I?
I wasn't fully like there when I woke up. So I didn't know why I was on the floor. I certainly didn't know why I threw up. And it took me about 10 minutes to realize, all right, now I know what happened. There's, undigested pills in my vomit. Like I remember what I'd done. And that, do I need to go to the hospital? Should I call 911? Should I call my parents? Should I just not do anything? I started going through this, like problem solving mindset. And I realized, all right, the first thing I'm gonna do is just call my parents and ask for help. And if I can get through that conversation and like get out the door, then maybe I don't need to go to the hospital. I should have. I 100% should have, but I didn't. And I called my parents. I asked for help. And 2 weeks later, they helped me check into rehab. And it was in rehab that I got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, erectile dysfunction, bipolar disorder, suicidal depression, anxiety disorder, sleep disorder, and attention deficit disorder. And I remember feeling completely crushed in that moment because I thought I had this idea of what rehab was going to be, right? Like, all right, 30 days off my substance. And to be honest, it was like, go do 30 days, because I had not spent 30 days off of drugs in maybe since I was 12 years old. Go get off of drugs for 30 days, get back to zero, get back to, to yourself. And then you'll come home and you'll have a handle on it, right? You'll have control over it this time. That was my idea. And I just received news from the doctor that if I didn't radically change everything about the way that I move through the world, I'd be dead in 5 years, regardless if I use substances again or not. My blood pressure was through the roof, 210 over 100 and something. My cholesterol was sky high. I had an A1C of 12. So that's a biomarker for people who are listening. That's a biomarker for diabetes. So an A1C below 5.7 is a healthy range. From 5.7 to 6.4 is pre-diabetic, and anything above that is type 2 diabetic. Mine was a 12. So my fasting blood glucose was around 390. And my entire idea of how I was going to recover was just completely shattered. And I wanted to leave. I wanted to quit because, again, all I thought I needed to do was get off drugs. Like that would, of course, that would be like me and my whole arrogant self and be like, yeah, that would be my only problem, right? The drugs would be my only problem. Well, it was quite clear to me that when they took my drugs away from me, every single problem I had was still there. That the substances were just not at all part of the equation. They were a solution that I believed, they were a substance that I believed was the solution to my problems. And I believe this to be true for anybody who suffers from substance abuse, that we think the substances are a problem until they take them away from us. Then we realize all of our problems are still there. And my dad had this really great conversation with me when I called him and told him I was leaving rehab. And he heard how scared I was. He heard the fear in my voice. And he said, you know, Adam, if there's something about your life that you don't like, and you can do something about it, then it's not a problem. And if there's something in your life that you don't like and there's nothing you can do about it, it's not a problem. It's just the way things are. And why don't we try and look at those things in a different way so that it's no longer seen as a problem? And that really struck me in a very powerful way, because it gave me the sense that if that's true, everything in my life can be taken care of. Anything that I have in my life that I would like to change is possible, because what it means is that if I'm the problem, I get to be the solution. And, you know, I had attended a retreat with Rip Esselstyn about 2 years before my suicide attempt. And I was there just to appease my father. My dad wanted me to go. My dad had, you know, has been a part of Whole Foods Market since the founding of the company. And Rip Esselstyn had just joined Whole Foods Market to partner with them and offer these Engine 2 retreats. And my dad said, you know, I really want you to go. And the only reason I went was because if I said yes, I knew he would give me money. I was high the whole time I was there. I went to the lectures, I listened to it, but it would be great if I could say, I went to this Engine 2 retreat. They taught me everything I needed to know. End of story, I fixed my life. But I just wasn't ready to give up what was allowing me to escape a life that was too painful a place to be. And my dad reminded me, he said, you know, Adam, a lot of these conditions that this doctor has diagnosed you with are reversible. And not only are they reversible, but you learned how to do it. So why don't we just look at it like this? You're not comfortable with these diagnoses. You know how to reverse them. That makes these situations not a problem, but just something that you're going to take charge of. And that's exactly what I decided to do. So when I left rehab, I moved into a sober living facility and I started to transition to a plant-based diet. And that's when the whole like emotional stuff started to happen. Like I had to recognize that this was more an emotional battle than anything else, because I would go to the pantry and I would open up the pantry and I would see oatmeal and Fruity Pebbles. Man, I freaking love Fruity Pebbles. Like I love that stuff. And don't get me wrong, I like oatmeal and I liked it then. And here's the interesting thing. The thing that I found interesting was that I knew the consequences of both choices. I knew that choosing Fruity Pebbles would continue to fuel the disease processes in my body. And I knew that choosing the oatmeal would do the opposite. So why in the world, knowing this, would I still want to choose the Fruity Pebbles? Why was none of this simply a matter of intellect and will? Why could I not know what to do, want to do it, and that's it, end of story? Why was there this like hugely emotional battle inside of me going, no, that's the wrong choice. Choose the Fruity Pebbles. And logically, I'm like, no, what are you talking about? I'm going to choose the oatmeal. That's the right thing to do. No, but you don't want that. You want the Fruity Pebbles. I'm telling you, you want the
angel and the devil.
Exactly. Why is this happening? And it pissed me off because it made me resent recovery. And that's when I read a book called The Pleasure Trap by Doug Lisle. Mm-hmm. And what this book talks about is the biological mechanism of compulsion. That there is a biological drive to continue to seek out behaviors that create the greatest dopamine response. And you know this, that dopamine is the chemical that's produced in the brain that gives us that excited euphoria that people call pleasure. But what I didn't know was that the purpose for pleasure was to indicate to us that we have just done something that's biologically beneficial. That's why people experience pleasure. Right. Only in the modern environment, it doesn't work, because this biological mechanism evolved from not the modern environment, but from the earth-connected environment, where behaviors that caused pleasure were always beneficial to us. And so it removed all this shame from me, because I understood immediately what was happening. When I stood there with those two choices, knowing Fruity Pebbles was the wrong thing and still wanting to do it, was because my body was doing exactly what it was supposed to do. There was nothing wrong with me. It wasn't because I was broken. It wasn't because I had some flawed moral system or no willpower. It was because I had been living in an environment where I was continuing to seek out behaviors that created such dopamine responses that were outside the bounds of normal human experience, that's what my body felt it needed to be successful. And I told myself, I get it now. I get the compulsion part of it. I get why I feel I want to make this choice. Now I have to understand that being comfortable with being uncomfortable is going to be a necessary part of me moving forward with positive change. And that the feelings that I have, the anger, the resentment, the anxiety that I feel in those moments when I have to make a choice that goes against that biological compulsion is completely reasonable. It makes complete sense. It is so reasonable for me to have only 30 days sober and 37 days away from fast food and junk food, for me to make a choice of choosing oatmeal and being frustrated about it and being angry about it. That makes complete sense. It makes complete sense for me to be 37 days sober and still have feelings of wanting to use. That is a completely reasonable response given the way I had been living my life. These feelings that I was having were trying to tell me something about how I moved through the world and how I was going to be able to greater connect to myself. And I was going to stop ignoring them, stop judging them. I was going to allow myself the space and compassion to willingly experience these feelings, because I recognized that these feelings were as necessary as every other feeling I experienced as being human. They were as necessary and healthy and human as joy, as happiness, as excitement. They meant just as much to the experience of being alive. And the more that I resisted them or fought them or avoided them, the longer it would take me to learn these lessons that my body was trying to get me to learn about how I best move through the world. And that's really where the emotional shift started to happen. I stopped ignoring parts of myself that I had been ignoring for the majority of my life. And I started to learn more about myself than I had ever learned in my entire life, because I stopped needing to be right all the time. And I allowed myself to just be right now. And in doing that, these incredible lessons that have been a part of me for my whole life were finally able to be heard. And it was 3 months later that I completely reversed my diabetes and heart disease. 10 months later, I had lost over 100 pounds. And in a year, I was off of every single medication I was prescribed in rehab, including the antidepressants and the mood stabilizers and all my other psych meds. And I had made this enormous shift in my life of being willing to not worry so much about whether or not I was doing the right thing, whether I was moving fast enough or if I was moving too fast, or, where was my recovery versus someone else's recovery. It was all, how do I show up in this moment as my best self and in a way that allows me to make positive change? 5 minutes from now doesn't matter. 5 minutes before doesn't matter. Tomorrow doesn't matter. Yesterday doesn't matter. The only time that change for me is possible is right now in this moment. And it's the only moment I need to pay attention to. If I do that, if I stay connected to my place, my step, and my breath, if I stay connected to these emotions that are happening and listen to them without judgment, then I will make the right choice every single time. But if I fight it because I think like, oh, this emotion or whatever is stopping me from being where I need to be, I'm going to make a decision that I don't want to make. And I've lost 200 pounds as of now. Going to have 7 years of continued sobriety in October. And it's really just been the most incredible experience that I've ever had. And that's why I'm so passionate about self-love in recovery, because self-love taught me acceptance rather than abstinence. And I don't wake up, and I didn't do this then. I didn't wake up going, all right, I'm going to spend another day avoiding meat, eggs, dairy, and drugs. And I woke up going, listen, what am I going to accept today that brings positive change to me and allows me to show up and be present as my best self? Mm-hmm. If I do that, meat, eggs, dairy, and drugs don't fall into the equation, not through abstinence, but through acceptance. I think that that's a huge difference in the way that substance abuse recovery is used today.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to take a breath and let that
sorry.
Let that sink in, let your story wash over all of us. And it's amazing. And I think, before we started recording, the thing that really makes this extraordinarily powerful and revolutionary for me is the fact that you're acting from a place of accepting yourself, loving yourself, trusting yourself, knowing your place in the world, rather than so many people who, oh, I've got to quit these drugs because I'm an awful person. Oh, I've got to lose this weight because I'm ugly and I hate myself. Oh, I've got
Yeah.
to do this because I just suck. But you
Yep.
are, so when I'm trying to like pinpoint in the
Yeah. Let's do
story,
it.
I'm trying to pinpoint in the story when the self-love awakening, for lack
Yeah.
of a better term, kind of happened. What
So
was that? Yeah.
it happened actually, I think it happened my second week in sober living. Maybe my third week in sober living.
And it
So
had to do with the Pleasure Trap book and like, oh, there's
it
nothing
did.
wrong with
It
me.
had to do with the pleasure trap because that removed shame of wanting to make decisions that I knew were wrong. And, even though the right decision was also there, it gave me the sense that there is a biological reason why I want to respond a certain way that is driving my decision-making choices, and I can be okay with that. But really it came from, I would have these experiences before I attempted suicide where I would come home from being out, and anytime I was out in public, I would look at people and I would watch them stare at me. And I would make up these stories about what they were thinking about me when they looked at me. And then I would come home and I would go stand in front of the mirror and I'd take off my shirt and I'd look at myself in the mirror and I would literally verbally say to myself everything I thought these people were saying to me, every single horrible thing I thought they were thinking about me. And I would beat myself. I would hit myself as hard as I could every time I said it. And the reason I did this was I believed if I could just hate myself enough, if I could just hate my life enough, I would want to change. And I did this almost every single week. I honestly believe that the answer to problems was if you just hate it enough, if you hate yourself enough, you'll want to change, right? But it never worked for me. It always made me want to do more of the things that were causing the problem.
Well, I think that some people hate themselves, it's like finding the bottom of the black hole or
Yeah.
whatever, the darkest point. Some people hate themselves to such a degree that like there's just like that is a necessary place to live in order for them to be empty.
Yeah.
And the emptiness is the place that allows kind of this vacuum that allows some fresh thought, fresh insight, fresh perspective to come in. And it's like, yeah.
Well, it's interesting because it's true because of those experiences, I was able to realize that that's never going to be my answer.
Right. And it's like, what if I could accept and love my self-hatred?
It
And
was it was a profound moment because I said, all right, let me look at this. Okay, I'm obese and I don't want to be. I have diabetes and heart disease and I don't want diabetes and heart disease. And I'm going to die from my substance abuse if I don't stop using. And I don't want to die. Why not? What is it about my life and myself that I love enough that I'm willing to do whatever is necessary to show up and be present as my best self and move forward and make these positive changes? Not what was it about myself that I hated enough. I know that for a fact I was not able to hate my way out of a bad situation. The only thing I was able to do was to love myself into a positive one. And instead of trying to remove negativity, increase positivity. I knew that if I continued to increase my daily behaviors that brought in positivity, eventually it would just remove the opportunities for destructive behavior, and I would find connection to this stuff.
Yeah. Tell me what you mean, or what the feeling, or what you mean when you're talking about bringing in more positivity and removing negativity. What's the negativity and what's the positivity? I think in the physical world, we can understand that, like, drugs and junk food are negativity. They're negative and they impact the body negativity.
Right.
But I think you mean more than that.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to show up and actually be able to live as my authentic self, because that was something that I hadn't been able to do in close to 20 years, 15 plus years. I wanted to be able to be myself and be okay with it. I wanted to wake up and willingly experience everything that life has to offer, positive or negative, and view it from a sense of contentment. Be okay with it. Be with people and not need to take things from them, not need to get things from them or have them listen to me, pay attention to me, but just be with people and have that be enough. Have life itself be everything that I need it to be simply by being alive. essentially, I wanted to reconnect to the experience of being alive and have that be everything I needed. And I was like, I don't even know if that's possible. I don't know what that takes to do, but I'm going to try this. And I was going to get up every single day. And I was going to say, okay, first thing I have to do is be grateful for the fact that today I've woken up. So practicing gratitude in the morning, being grateful for the fact that I am here as I am. And I'm okay with it as I am. And at that time, I was still 300 plus pounds. I still had diabetes. I still had heart disease. And be like, you know what? I'm still able to show up as my best self, even in this moment. And that I'm not happy in spite of this situation. I'm happy because of it, right? That I have the ability to show up. And even though what other people would say, wow, that's got to be a miserable way to live, I'm still alive and I could still view life from a positive standpoint. I could still say that I am a human being making it through this world. And
so that's really what you mean is having the positive perspective on the journey.
Yeah.
I'm
And
curious.
not that like I didn't get upset or angry or cry or, yell at people, whatever, but be like, all right, that happened. And is that how I want to move through the world next time? What is this lesson that I'm able to learn from this and view what I just went through as a positive? Like I just gained great awareness of how I move through the world from that experience.
Right. I think that is the absolute game changer is just having that perspective on seeing life as for us, not happening to us. And when life is for us, then we realize like everything without exception, all of the things are opportunities to learn, grow, evolve, heal, love, expand, awaken.
Yeah.
And we're no longer, just a victim of our reality. We're a co-creator powerfully.
I think that it comes down to like when I was stuck in this place of being a victim of life, right? Then everything that happened was happening to me, right? Life was happening to me rather than I was a part of life and things were happening, right? And so when I shifted the mindset, and that's a common thing, I think that in recovery and in people who are experiencing depression is that everything becomes self-focused, right? Life happens to you, right? You're feeling sad because, life is just making things hard for you. The universe is making things hard for you. And that's why I can't get through this moment without it being a hassle, right? When I stop thinking about myself as being, this broken person and this person who's not a part of the goings on of the world around me, then I just saw experiences as just like, this happened and I'm alive and I'm a part of it. And it's not happening to me. It's just happening where I am. And I'll be okay with it. And that was a huge shift because I no longer saw myself as a victim of the universe, but a part of the universe. And part of being alive in the universe is experiencing things that are sometimes uncomfortable. Being uncomfortable is a part of being alive. And if I was going to continue to ignore these experiences, these feelings of anger and anxiety, I might miss out on some of what is best about being human.
Did you have any role models at this point in your life, like people that you really looked up to who called your best part of yourself forward?
My role models were my parents. My mom and my dad. My dad, who at this point had lost his father to cancer and his mother to an accident. She fell in her house, and his sister died young from complications of diabetes. And I saw my dad go through these like tragic losses and then have me, his son, treat him unbelievably horribly and without question love me unconditionally. And I said, wow, what a gift it must be to allow life to happen to you like that and still love unconditionally. What a gift it must be to have somebody treat you horribly and still see them and accept them for being human and being your son and saying, you can do whatever you want to me because I still see you and I will never stop seeing you. And I was like, man, I wish I could do that. I would love to be able to look at somebody I completely disagree with and go, you know what? No matter what you say or do, you are still worthy of my acceptance because you're human and you're alive. What if I was willing to do that with everyone else and myself? And I saw my mom, who is just this, this ball of energy, and she is willing to feel everything, and I wasn't. And I said, what if I was willing to feel? What if I was able to live feelingly, where I would willingly feel everything and be okay with being sad and be okay with showing it to people? And what if I didn't have to be perfect? What if being sad and being okay with sad was part of being complete? What if we don't feel because we're broken? What if we feel because we're whole? What if that is what is best about being human, to willingly feel everything and not be ashamed of it? And so they were really my role models for recovery. And
Yeah. Well, I can really relate as you're sharing about your parents, and I'm blessed to have wonderful role model type of parents as well. And that being said, having these people who demonstrate being human in such a beautiful way
yeah,
is really intimidating. It's like,
it
I
is.
can't, as a youngster, I can really relate. Like, I can't, like, I don't want to do that. I can't live like that. I can't relate to world that way. My friends are making fun of me, and like, how am I
Yeah.
supposed to show up like you, mom? Like, how am I supposed to have that courage and confidence? So it's like such a blessing to have that role model, and it's also like pressure on
Yeah.
obviously it's not intentional pressure that they hold. It's not anything it's just the self for me. And I think it sounds like in your story as well, it's that self-induced kind of pressure to be something that you're not, or
Yeah.
to be different.
It's so like my whole life growing up, my dad was he was an example that I thought I could never live up to in regards to like the way to react to other people's opinions of you. Like, people could think the most ridiculous things about my dad, and he has no desire to ever need to prove them wrong, because they're wrong. He's like, who cares? Who
That's great.
cares? I'm
Yeah.
like, for me, what other people think of me was everything. I had to prove to them who I thought I was. And I could never do what he was doing. I was like, man, I'm never going to be that. And I guess that's what it takes to be, successful as a human. And I was like, so that's part of, but the more I went through, learning self-love and self-acceptance, the more I understood what it takes to be that. Is that at the end of the day, what other people think of me is none of my business.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah. So as we sit and talk here today, with this journey that, it sounds like 2012 was really, would you say that was, well, yeah, that was rock bottom. So,
Yes.
so 7 years later, almost just about, like, where would you, like, how do you see yourself now? Like, what, obviously you have this self-love, self-acceptance, you're very connected with that. And
Yeah.
like, but share with me a little bit about, because I know that on the human level, like, no one's really perfect. On the
No.
spiritual level, divinely, we're all perfect. We're all just fine the way we are. But humanly, we all have our shortfalls. So share with me, like, your journey in physical world reality, when it comes to where you still get hung up on loving yourself and accepting your
Yeah.
journey.
I still get hung up on this belief that there's a point in my life where I'm supposed to be somewhere else. I'm supposed to be further along, or
Oh, you got that one too?
yeah, exactly.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
You probably got yours before mine. See, I mean, no, I'm kidding. No,
yeah, I've been there. I was there like
exactly.
2 months ago.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing, is
Yeah.
believing that there's some kind of race that I'm supposed to keep up with other people.
Hmm.
And I have to remind myself that there is no fast pace or slow pace. There's my pace. But that, I judge myself quite frequently for it. And the best lessons I've learned about this are from being in nature. Nature is one of my favorite teachers when it comes to non-judgment. And nature never questions itself. It exists as it should, and continues to, in harmony with everything else. Right? It exists as it should in the moment. It grows, it blooms, it crumbles, it breaks, it flows. And it does so in harmony with all other things. And by doing so, the world moves along as it should, without question and without judgment. What if I'm willing to do the same thing? What if I'm willing to say that maybe I'm supposed to be breaking a little bit right now? Maybe this experience is allowing me to show up and be present and be my best self. Maybe I'm not supposed to be the strongest I've ever felt right now. What can I learn from it? Right? We don't look at a tree in the fall, see its leaves turning and falling and saying, oh, that tree's got some problems. And we certainly don't look at the same tree in the spring and say, oh, now that's a better tree. That tree's much better off than it is now than it was in the winter. No,
it's healed. It's healed itself. It's
right.
loving itself now.
We never do that. We inherently know that nature will show up exactly as it should to be its best self, given the environment and how and what is going on with the world around it. It will do so to be in harmony with all of the things. What if I'm willing to attempt that on a daily basis? And so that's really what grounds me. Going on a trail run and noticing how nature unquestionably shows up for itself without judgment. Like it just does what it does, because in doing so, it is exactly where it needs to be.
Yeah. And then, remembering like, hey, Adam, you, Mr. Adam, the human being, you're actually an animal, part of this natural
100%.
world as well. And and it's like how the word connection has come up a lot in this conversation, and also disconnection. But I am always constantly reminding myself that disconnection, quote unquote, air quote, is really just self-induced perceived. It's a perception where it's impossible. It's impossible to become disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
Disconnection is death, and even, it's just disconnection from this physical world reality. Right. It's, so it's like these feelings of feeling disconnected, and you've used it. I think you've talked about the feelings, and rather than not getting wrapped up and identified with, oh, this means I am this. This means I'm not an addict. I just have had addictions at times.
I struggled with addiction.
Yeah. And that, that's part of the natural world. That's part of the natural phenomenon. Not to say that trees become addicted to different things, but things, there is death, and there is, battles and parasites and pests and fights and all sorts of things in the natural world. And it's not wrong. It's not bad. It doesn't mean there's disconnection, disharmony. It's all fine.
It is. I mean, that's the thing. It's all about your perception of how you fit into the world around you, right? So we are simply another species of earth-connected animal that exists on this planet and exists with all other non-human animals and life forms on this planet. We believe ourselves separate because we have this incredible range of emotional intelligence and IQ. We have the ability to perceive ourselves separate. And in doing so, we've made some really bad decisions in how we fit into the world around us. We've walled ourselves off behind concrete and glass, so much to the point that we will spend the majority of our lives not touching nature, right? We have shoes on our feet that don't allow us to touch the ground. We walk on concrete, which isn't the ground. We drive on concrete. We live in air-conditioned buildings. And these are great things, but we do it so much that we believe it's where we are supposed to be. And in doing so, we've so greatly disconnected from our real home, which is nature, that we never really go there. And in doing so, by the time we're old enough to start to question our place in the world, by the time we have the cognitive ability to do so, so much of us feel lost. And so much of us enjoy the experience of vacationing in nature. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that so many of the greatest vacationing hotspots are natural wonders? Because there's this sense, in my opinion, that when I go out into nature and I stand next to a tree and I take off my shoes and I put my feet in the dirt and I put my hand on the tree and I start to breathe, that I'm home, that it feels natural to be there. And I recognize this great longing that is being answered, that I have missed nature. And then I also question and consider the possibility that nature missed me, because regardless of the fact of whether I'm walled away from it, I am still a part of it. I still live with it. And by connecting to it, I'm connecting to something that is inherently part of what I am, nature. Yeah. And so for me, like I mentioned before, why nature is like one of my greatest teachers, it's because it's part of what I am. Whether I believe it or not, whether I perceive it or not, I am as much a part of nature as that tree outside. Yeah. And I'm as dependent upon it as that tree outside. And just as that tree changes, depending on what's going on in nature and what's going on around it, I change. I can't question or judge myself for it as much as I used to.
Yeah. I this reminds me of a story that I like to share about my kind of epiphany of connecting with nature. I lived at Esalen Institute in Big
Yeah,
Sur, California for a month.
that's
And
supposed to be amazing, by the way.
yeah, and talking about nature, there you are in it, on it, most of the day out, not wearing shoes and all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And I've and then but I moved back to Los Angeles where I was living at the time. I spent a month in Esalen and but moved back to Los Angeles, and I got really like was feeling really down and depressed, and I was, had my meditation practice and everything, and I just like closed my eyes, and I was like, oh, feeling like, oh, where's nature? This sucks being in LA. And I was outside,
Yeah.
meditating, and I opened my eyes after meditation to kind of like, I had found peace and my breath and everything. And the first thing that I locked eyes with a lizard,
Hmm.
um, in in Los Angeles, just like a lizard on the sidewalk or something.
Yeah.
And he was just staring at me, and I was like, oh, like I'm not. I'm in. Nature is not Esalen. Nature is everywhere,
Yeah.
and it's just really humbling and important to remember that. And I totally agree. I think that we wall ourselves off absolutely. Like we're all, here we are sitting in our
Yeah.
rooms respectively, and earbuds in our ears and talking on a computer screen. But that being said, I think that it is more essential, like you're saying, now than ever, to make it an intentional effort to
Mhm.
maintain that connection in a physical sort of way.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that we shouldn't look at nature as something we visit, but as something we return to, right?
Hmm.
Like I don't want to go visit nature. I want to go return to nature for a little bit and just and connect. It's the same way, you know, like I had this sense when I went into recovery that I had to become, the person that I needed to be, right? I had to become the sober version of myself, and that was going to be the success, right? But it wasn't a transformation. It was a return. For me, recovery was a profound return to my authentic self. And that the food that I fed myself, it being a constant and daily act of self-love and self-care, the way that I spoke to myself and the way that I lived with others were acts of self-care and connection. This allowed me to become the person that I really, really wanted to become. And what's amazing is it's the person I've always been. It's just the most authentic version of it, right? I have always been everything I've ever needed to be happy and healthy in this world. I have always been enough. Once I understood that, that knowledge was known to me, every single change, every transformation, everything I've ever needed to do was possible. Because if it wasn't so, if I wasn't everything I've ever needed to be, no change would be possible,
Hmm.
right? I did not enter this world disconnected, uh, abusing substances, angry, and sick. I entered this world stunningly open to the world, to information, to growth, to connection. That's how we form, right? We enter this world with this profound willingness to not want to question a thing. And in doing so, we learn more in those years than we'll ever learn throughout the rest of our lives because we unquestionably allow the world to come into us so that we can understand it better and learn how to move through this world. And what if I recognize that that person is still me? But I have just started, I've been continually ignoring it and continually denying the fact that that person exists. And that's what I really think recovery is about. I will say it 100%. I am not an addict. I'm not now. I never have been. I am 100% confident I would have died from substance abuse if I hadn't accepted that. That is 100% a fact, but it's not who and what I am. And I continually to say this, that I do not now, nor will I ever again define myself by what I struggle with. I will not tell a person I am angry, I am sad, I am lonely, I am anxious, I am an addict, I am any of these other things. No, no, no. I feel angry. I feel sad. I feel lonely. I feel anxious. I struggled with addiction. When it's those things, then it's an observation.
Right.
When it's an observation, I have the opportunity to respond to it rather than be an unwilling participant of it.
Wholeheartedly agree. I think that's probably the most powerful takeaway I mean, I can't say what's most powerful for people to take away, but people are going to take away what they take away. But for me, I really resonate with that message. And I think that the, for how I would also, what I would add to what you're saying is, when we identify with an experience, I am depressed, I am addicted, I am whatever, then it's like, there's only one,
Yeah.
there's I am this.
Yeah.
But when we feel, then it's I feel this. There's
Yeah.
separation.
Yeah.
And in that separation, there's a little space for fresh perspective, fresh insight, and space to be different in the next moment to come. And I think that a lot of people in physical health, mental health, addiction world, whatever it may be, a lot of people get totally wrapped up in what they've been diagnosed with, what they're feeling, what their symptoms are. And I'm always, coaching people. And I think it starts with really how we speak and how we verbalize our, human experience, because a lot of people just unconsciously say, I'm depressed.
Yep.
And I'm this, because maybe that's what other people say. And it's just, that's the norm of verbalization. But the energy that those words carry, very constricting, very limiting. Yeah.
And it's yeah, limiting is the best word I would say to it, because that's not all that you are, right? When it's a feeling, like say, I feel sad, then there's an observation and a recognition that it's a fleeting moment in time. Then you recognize that it's a signal that is arising in your body to try and tell us something that's incredibly meaningful about what is happening at this point in time with how you're moving through the world. And when that is understood, you could say, as all things that are fleeting in life, this might be very valuable to pay attention to, because it's here for now and it won't be here forever. What can I learn from this signal about what is happening right now? And why do I feel this way? Why do I feel angry about this moment in time? Or what happened, just a moment ago? Why? And what is it about my life that this is trying to tell me? Yeah. And only through observation is that possible. When it is identity, then it is always going to be what you are in that moment.
Yeah, we can't see. It's
you
like
can't see
you got to take the blinders off.
You're an unwilling participant rather than just a witness. And I think that is a limiting, as you said, limiting way of moving through the world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like we're just getting into the juicy stuff. but we could certainly go on and dive into some deep stuff, but I'd love to kind of rein things in and
sure,
and maybe wrap things up with, there's been a lot of nuggets here that I think people can take away and feel inspired by. And I'd love to just invite you to share any other additional words of wisdom around anyone suffering with any, eating disorder or addiction, or, just someone wanting to live a little bit more mindful, a little bit healthier.
Sure. It's interesting because I wrote a post the other day about this. And, first of all, I want everyone to know that you are not broken for feeling the way that you feel. That I wish that everybody could know that for a fact, that we're not broken because we feel because it's the most human thing any of us do. It's the one thing that I know that I have in common with every single human alive on this planet right now, is that at the end of the day, we've all felt. It is the most human thing that any of us will do. And yet, unfortunately, it's the most uncomfortable thing for a lot of us to talk about. But remember, the core of addiction is about not wanting to be present in your life because your life has become too painful a place to be. And in my opinion, disconnection is at the root of this pain. Disconnection from ourselves, from people, from purpose, and from the community around us. This disconnection gives us a feeling that life no longer makes sense in any truly meaningful way. And the feelings that arise as a result of living in this state of disconnection are not the problem. They are actually part of the solution. And when we stop ignoring these signals, these highly evolved signals that our body is sending to us to learn about how we possibly disconnect from what's truly meaningful to us in life, how to best move through the world, when we start seeing them for what they are, incredibly meaningful things in life, when we start recognizing that perhaps feeling anxious, feeling sad, feeling angry is the most sane reaction and response your body could have, given how you're moving through the world, we can stop judging ourselves for it. And when we stop judging ourselves for feeling, we allow ourselves to witness them rather than just be unwilling participants. And It's from that we can take a step forward. And that's all you have to do, is take one single step forward. Don't worry about if the road that you're on right now is the road that you finish on. It doesn't have to be. Just be willing to be slightly uncomfortable, feel things that maybe you've ignored for a while, without judgment. You're not broken for feeling it, and keep taking another step forward. It's not about getting to the end of the trail. It's about just moving forward. And so all of us have the ability to do that. And if you are somebody who is seriously struggling with substance abuse, there are numbers or resources you can call that require no financial commitment. You can talk to somebody, you can get an assessment. It is very, very important that you at least know that there are programs out there for you to talk to. If you're feeling suicidal, it is, I just want you to know that if these are things you're dealing with, you are not alone. You are not broken for having this situation happening to you, and that people are willing to help you if you want it. And don't be ashamed of it. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It doesn't mean that you failed, right? There's no failure in life. It's just trial and learning, the whole thing. And the great thing about trial and learning is that at the end of the day, you've either been successful, which is great, or you've learned something, which is also great. You can end your day. Both situations are incredibly positive. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think that's such a powerful place to live from. And, it's funny that we had this whole conversation and didn't really talk that much about food and about obviously in your story, you reversed all your diseases and you lost 200 pounds, it wasn't just because you loved yourself. I mean, it was because you loved yourself, but it was because of the actions that you took out of self-love. So obviously that's a big part of this that I would love to dive in more, maybe another time, but,
great.
But thank you so much for the words of wisdom. And how can people connect with you, and what's a good place to learn more about, is there information about the whole food immersion program or that?
Sure. Yeah. So, you can follow me at Plant-Based Addict on social media. I also have a Facebook page, Plant-Based Addict. You can learn more about, now, only team members are the only people who are.
Yeah.
So, but you can like research about the Total Health Immersions team on the Whole Foods website. There are public spots available to each one of these immersion programs. So, you can look at engine2.com. You can go to drmcdougall.com. You can go to Dr. Stoll's website or Dr. Furman's website. You can see these programs. I work for Mastering Diabetes, so check out masteringdiabetes.org. We have a retreat that is going to be happening this year. We've already done one. We do it in Costa Rica, where we help people reverse insulin resistance in a beautiful setting in Playa Potrero, right on the beach. So come join us. And then,
awesome.
If you want to look at the Infinite study, which is the research study that I'm doing on plant-based nutrition and addiction, go to my GoFundMe campaign. So just go to GoFundMe and research the Infinite study, search the Infinite study. And if you want, you can donate $5 to the GoFundMe campaign. The GoFundMe campaign is just raising additional funds, but we would appreciate anything.
That's very cool. We didn't get a chance to talk too much about the Infinite study as well, but what's the hopeful forecasted timeline of when this study is taking place and stuff?
August.
That's when it's starting? Or
Yep.
Cool.
It's going to start in August, and we anticipate it's going to take 2 years to complete. We are going, like I said, it's a randomized controlled trial. So we'll have a control group and an intervention group of 50 participants in each group that will need to go through the entirety of the 10-week intervention. And so since it's a rolling enrollment, because we're running the study on a population that exists in the treatment center in Austin, Texas, we have to offer the opportunity and they have to willingly partake. So we can't just put the entire treatment center on this in the research study. So we anticipate it's going to take 2 years to capture all the data and all the participants. It's going to be really amazing. We're going to study everything from blood biomarkers to the microbiome and how those changes in your inflammatory markers and your gut health relate to changes in your mood scores as a result of eating a plant-based diet, learning about plant-based nutrition, gaining the self-efficacy, and we're really excited about what it's going to mean for the future of recovery.
I'm really excited to see this study and to learn it. And I feel like, obviously good science comes from, non-bias, non-attachment, but I think we kind of have some feeling of what this kind of stuff will show, right?
I do,
no attachments, no attachments.
And look, you know what? Here's the thing, because we want to be completely non-biased, I'm just funding the study. Like my nonprofit is not running the study, we're funding it. We, Northern Arizona University is running the study with Infinite Recovery. And so my treatments, my nonprofit said, this would be a great study to do. Obviously, if we did it and got the results we wanted, people go, well, of course you got them. So we have contracted Northern Arizona University to run the study on the treatment center.
Yeah, but that's a good point, because you hear about these like industry funded studies and you follow the money and it's like, oh, we found the culprits, the the funding of the study. Oh, but yeah, it's a good point that you're handing it off to Northern Arizona University, and yeah, anyways, it'll be fun to see what unfolds through that. I'm sure a lot of good enlightening information, and look forward to staying connected on social media land.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you'll hear from new friends and fans and followers. And thanks for sharing your story. I mean, I think that it's obviously takes a lot of courage and clarity and just focus to be able to reflect with, because a lot of people share their story and there's still some like emotional entanglement in the story. But as you share your story, it's just such a clear, neutral, learning, teaching kind of thing. It's not like I don't know, it's not a drama.
It's funny because when I first started sharing my story, Rip Esselstyn gave me my first speaking job. He allowed me to come and present at his retreat. And he was like, dude, you were a basket case. Like before I went up, I was so nervous. He's like, calm down, you're going to be fine. And then I went up there and like, it was still so raw. Like I was crying through all of it. And look, whenever I do present in public and I have family in the audience, like I do get emotional. And I actually think it's great to be vulnerable and break open for people. But my ability to reflect back on it now in like peace and contentment allows me to gain a greater understanding of what I went through.
We're not suggesting that you dismiss any emotion that might come up in a thing, but when was the first time that you did like publicly share your story like that with
It was May of 2015.
Okay.
So it's been 4 years now. This is, and I've been working for Rip since then. After I gave my first speech, I was only supposed to stay at the retreat for 2 days. And after I spoke, and I've never, I did drama growing up, like I was really into drama, but I never really shared my story or anything like that. And I got an amazing response. People were, really emotionally responding to it. There were a lot of tears. There was a lot of cheering and everything. And afterwards, I was like so overwhelmed that I went for a run. Like we're in Sedona in the desert, and I was like, I'm gonna go run in these mountains, and I'm just going to let nature take this moment for me and let me like, soak it in and heal. And afterwards I come back and Rip stopped me and he goes, first of all, can you stay the rest of the week? We want you here the whole time. And we want you to come back for every single retreat we do from now on. I was like, there's no way that this moment just happened.
So cool.
It was very
cool. I think it's a testament to what happens when you show up, be yourself, be raw, be vulnerable, be real, and come from a place of service and self-love. Yeah.
That's it. That's what I want my life to be, to show up perfectly imperfect, love myself regardless, and be of service to others.
Well, thanks for being a role model of what that looks like and what that can look like. And thanks for calling out the best in each and every one of us. So
thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Been a pleasure to connect, and sending everyone out there lots of peace and love, self-love and love of others, and love of our precious planet. And until next time, my friends.